My cool friend Kahlief Adams. Yay!
What up? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm chilling.
Yeah.
I'm dodging the coronavirus like Neo in the Matrix.
That is exactly what we're all doing, ladies and gentlemen. If you have just joined us, this is your first Kind of Funny podcast this week. We are all working from home for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, this is a great chance to get the folks that usually don't get to come visit us in on other shows. And what really sucks, of course, Kahlief, is that you were supposed to be in today.
I know. I'm so sad about that. We were supposed to hug.
Oh, yeah. You were coming in. It was going to be quite the show because you were going to come in. You were going to do Games Daily, of course. Yep. Then we were immediately having you do a We Have Cool Friends that was going to be another all-black cast. It was going to be you. It was going to be Bless. It was going to be Xavier Woods. And this punk Paris.
Oh, my God.
What?
Talking about I have to do things at work. What is this nonsense?
The thing about it, Kahlief, is, you are one of my cool friends in the industry, and I'm so excited to get to talk to you about something that's not strictly like what's going on in gaming, because we do that all the time professionally. But personally, we never get to sit around and chat. And you are one of the warmest, most beloved people in the industry. And every day I see this Paris guy riding you.
I mean, the thing is, and first of all, thank you so much for that amazingly kind compliment.
Well, that's the truth, man.
I didn't know that the other two people in the industry were saying nice things about me. I mean, Paris is a hater. I love him, but he's a hater. We have to understand that, when you have people in your life that don't want to see you succeed in the culinary arts, then they come at you with all this nonsense about how they cook their ribs and their meat well. And we just have to say that, it's disproven that Paris is good at cooking anything.
Yeah.
We haven't actually seen him in front of a grill. We've seen the grill, we've seen the food, and we've seen it cooking. We've never seen him actually touch the food at all. So I suspect that someone else has been coming in and doing the food and prepping it and getting all that stuff together, while I am doing all the work.
I see you out there. You're grinding.
I'm grinding. I have like tools. I have seasonings. I have all the stuff that Paris does not have. So, 2021, when I run for president, even though there won't be,
we're doing another race in 2021. Oh my God!
We're just gonna push it back to 2021 so I can come back into the fold. You will all see the real deal about like how my cooking gets done and how we make food great.
And that's the thing, Paris, of course, Gamertag Radio. I see him every day on you about these oven baked ribs, and he's trying to get me in there to help, goad you. But in fact, if you go to Cooking with Greggy, I have a recipe for oven baked ribs that are fantastic.
See, this is the thing, though. I knew that already. I understood because I am an actual person who looks and watches the content.
Exactly.
So I understand that this is real. I understand that you have a love of wings, and I have a love of wings too. So we have this thing right now where, people will not come into our circle of hate.
No, we won't allow it.
We don't have hate in our circle. We just have love. It's all about love of good things. And if you don't like good things, you're a part of Paris's crew.
Exactly. Right. If we had a thing that said we have friends who like bad things, Paris would be on that show, but he's not. Instead, we have cool friends and you're on it.
It would definitely be a Webby Award-winning show.
Kahlief, what I like to do is when I start these things, because I got told a long time ago I don't do it well, I bring on my cool friends and then just talk like everybody knows them. If people don't know you, how do you describe yourself?
I am a former IT guy who started a web blog, who then found that no one liked to read his work, and then moved into the podcasting field around spotlighting people of color in a space that no one else was doing it. So that's kind of the way I approach it when people ask me, so what do you do? And I'm like, this is all the stuff.
Here's the menagerie.
Here's all the things that I wind up doing. So I wear many hats, try to figure out good ways to bring people together through the work that I do, and to have fun in this life. This life is short, so try to figure out good ways to bring some enjoyment to it.
And so it is all anchored in gaming?
What was that again? I missed that.
It is all anchored in gaming?
Yeah, I think most of it is right now anchored in gaming. Like I have a whole bunch of different things. I think that, one of the weird things about being in the internet and kind of making content at this point is that you kind of get pigeonholed into not only talking about specific things that you've kind of been known to talk about, but you also then kind of like move away from other aspects of your life in some aspects, because sometimes it doesn't, pay off in the same ways that you would hope that they would in terms of, numbers or metrics or any of that stuff.
Sure.
I've been lucky enough to kind of branch out a little bit in some ways, most recently in the past couple of months, and that's been around kind of an addendum show that I have called Some More Thoughts.
Mhm.
And that's been fun to kind of get off the ground. Like I've always wanted to talk about other things that I find important, politics and social interaction and conversations that people are, having in other spaces. But what once you're kind of going down the gaming road, you don't really have a space to talk about that because sometimes gaming audiences don't really care for that kind of content.
Stick to games. That's what
Yeah,
I follow you for.
yeah. What are you talking to me about all this other stuff? And I've always kind of, bucked against that because I'm just like, games are a sliver of your life, is a huge sliver in mine. It's been there since I was 4, but it's
Mhm.
been one of those things where, everything is affecting the way I look at games in that prism through which I do. So why not talk about all that cool stuff and bring it all together in fun ways? So it's been fun to be able to do that of late. And I'm hoping to expand on that in some other cool ways. So that'll be dope.
So, how far back do we go to you starting on this journey? When were you last just an IT person and said, "I wanna start doing a web blog?"
Ooh, man, that was, probably, like, 11 years ago at this point.
Wow,
Like,
okay.
Small Point Blog, ran for about 6 years, and then no, actually ran for about 4, and then Spawn on Me has run for about 6.
Mhm.
And I remember the day I was sitting next to my boy, we were both rocking the IT desk, and, it was funny because we both kinda sat there and we were like, "Man, we have bigger dreams than this, and this ain't it." This
This ain't
ain't
it,
the
kid.
move. This ain't it, kid. And it was weird because I was never a person who was fairly driven by anything. I'd always kind of um been glad to be in the room, so to speak. For a lot of folks who don't know me, my background in terms of my family stuff was like I was raised by my grandma who basically took me from my two drug addicted parents and raised
Mhm.
me. Um and she
Where were
basically
you raised?
I was raised in the Bronx, New York.
Okay.
Shout out to the Bronx. Shout out to the BX. And having that space to grow alongside video games because that was the thing that kind of saved me from being out on the 80 streets of the Bronx
Sure.
when things were not great. It kind of gave me a foundation to kind of figure out where the next steps are going to wind up being. So then, fast forward to me working my IT job.
Well, don't even fast forward. Like, how hard was that at the time? Like, what how did your grandmother introduce games to you?
Yeah, she brought me my first gaming system. A lot of a lot of stuff that people haven't even seen before because they're too young to. Like when people ask me, like, "So, what was your first gaming system?" People are like, "Was it the Nintendo?" I was like, "No, I had a Atari, had an Atari 2600, and then I had a ColecoVision, and then I
Yep.
had a couple things that people don't really know except for Mike Micah. Shout out to Mike Micah. Uh,
Jared Petty and Mike Micah, they know it.
no, no doubt, no doubt. So I had like I had a Astrocade, a Bally Astrocade,
Oh my god.
which had wood paneling on it,
Yeah.
which was amazing.
Because it would match everything in the house then.
No doubt. It was like it matched the big TV and the little TV. So you had them both stacked up, so it was good. And then I had a Vextrex, which a lot of people don't know about, which was this really fantastic kind of like line traced system. 4 buttons, 1 joystick, had these side carts, and it had these like really weird plastic overlays for different games. So you throw in a cart into the side of it, and it looks like a little mini TV. So you throw a cart into the side of it, and then you put the overlay over to basically make the map for each game.
Uh-huh.
Super weird system, but it was fantastic. I love that thing to death. So yeah, she was the one who basically gave me gaming as a way to keep me safe and off the streets. So I owe all this stuff to her. Wherever she may be at this point. I hope she's proud, and I hope that she's happy that she made me the introvert that I am today.
Hey, it's paying off in the current climate.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I'm built for this. Thank you, Grandma. She got me ready
What
for this a long time ago.
is it for the list of systems you just rattled off,
Yeah.
like, was she getting those for you every time, or did it eventually turn into you had to self-fund those? Because I remember, growing up and it was like, maybe for a Christmas I could get a console, but otherwise it was scraping together stuff to go trade at Funkoland.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I think, well, grandma, it's funny because I remember one day after my mom had passed away, I call her my mom because she's the person who raised me, she's my grandma. I remember going and like rummaging through her old desks and finding one of her paychecks in that old desk.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, "How in the hell did you help? Like, how did you do all this stuff? Like, how did you get me things?" 'Cause I was pretty much an only child. Like, I found out later on that I had half brothers and sisters, and that's a whole other story.
Sure.
But you know, it was all, her being, amazing and figuring out ways to scrape money together to get that stuff together. And I know that to a certain extent, like many of those systems that I wind up getting were mistake systems, because I was probably like, "Hey, ma, can you get me a Nintendo?" And she saw this thing that looked like a Nintendo, and it
Yep,
wound up
yep.
being Astrocade, whatever the other things were. Um
I will never forget the one Christmas where, you give a Christmas I you give the Christmas list to your mom, and
mhm.
it was that thing where grandma came in and gave me a video game, I opened it up, and it was the right Game Gear Madden or whatever, and I
Uh-huh.
was like, "I can't fathom my grandmother walking into the Venture department store with this list and being like, 'I need a Game Gear Madden.'"
Yeah, I am sure that my grandma, like, went to the store like, I feel like there was, like, almost a drug deal happening. It's like you go to one person who knows the other person, and then they, like, collaborate to figure out, like, what the actual thing that you were asking for was. So I'm sure she asked whoever the youngest person was on staff, at the hospital that she used to work in. It was like, "What's the Nintendo thing? What's that? Give me the Danky Kang thing." And I'm like
Exactly, yeah.
and then we wound up getting, stuff in the house, so yeah.
So she gets that it gets you on your love of gaming started, but then you take that into, "I wanna do IT?"
Yeah, I think gaming was my gateway drug for sure. Like when I was young, I wanted to make games, and then I was like, "Yo, math, ha ha ha, you're funny."
Yeah, no thanks.
Um, yeah, and that turned into my love of tech. Like that definitely was the thing that sparked me wanting to be near computers and to work with computers. I had a Tandy TRS 80 when I was very very young, and remember going into like being really excited about going to computer class when I was in elementary school and learning about logo and basic and all that kind of stuff. Like make the turtle go in 45 degrees. Like, yay, I was learning how to start that process of being able to understand that some of those things were going to be in my life for a long time. And then IT just wind up happening. Like I think it's one of the kind of earliest things that you can kind of get connected with in a professional manner that will let you be around the thing that you like the most, and that was computers and computer games and things like that. So yeah, IT was a very interesting space because you learn a lot about how people lie all the time.
I don't know how this broke. I don't know. I didn't go to that site.
Yeah, it's very much like there's a scene from gosh, why can't I think of the movie right now, but there's a scene where Bill Duke, who is famous for his moment in the Terminator movie, not Terminator, the Predator movie, where
Ah,
he
okay.
where he sits at the desk and he's talking to one of the young gang members that he found, lying to him, and he's like, "You done effed up, right? You done effed up." And it's like that is the part of the conversation around most IT, workers that you'll wind up seeing is like, you're part therapist, part, electronics magician, and trying to figure out why people are doing stuff and why they're breaking things and getting them to tell you the truth, but you learn a lot from being in IT, and I think that actually helped me a bunch, kind of making content and also like learning about the stories that I wanted to kind of tell, because you dig into the way that people think and you
Yeah.
dig into the way that people respect the technology, and that's always been a really like fundamental thing for me in the space that I've been in.
And so you're at IT and you realize with your friend, you have bigger dreams than this.
Yeah, we sit down and we're both kind of like you know let me even take a step back. Like I think New
That's
York
okay.
is a place where the hustle spirit is always really hard to kind of grok because you know that you're always grinding for something. You just don't know what it might
Sure.
be. And we both kind of looked at each other because you come into roadblocks in any job and you're like, how can I overcome this in a way that feels good about me as a human being and also like putting good things out into the world. And he was at the time digging into photography, which then lent him to become one of the like best wedding DJs on the planet right now. It's super weird. Like he was a classically trained musician, so all these things are like parts of his lifestyle. And we both sat in each other. And he was like, "I know you do this computer stuff and these video game things, and like, why aren't you doing that for real? And I was like, I don't know. I don't understand why I'm not actually doing that stuff. And a lot of it was me being scared, for one. Two, not really understanding what the avenue was going to wind up being. And three, me not just believing in myself. Like I was really down on myself on being able to feel like my voice had enough power and purpose to be able to do some of that work. And then one day hit, and I was sitting at my desk, and someone asked me a really dumb IT question.
And this is where you snap.
Yeah, I was just running around kicking printers and stuff, and I was like, "Yo, this is stupid." But it was one of those days when I sat there and I went home, and I was like, "I'm tired of feeling stupid, and I don't want to feel dumb anymore, and I want to feel like, I'm not just doing this for the sake of doing it, and that I have some version of, being able to talk about a thing I love in a real way." And then like 2 weeks later, I like got my domain together, like started figuring out how to, do stuff in a really early CMS and like WordPress, and then had a site up in like 2 weeks, and no
Wow.
one checked it out and no one knew what it was. And
Of
then
course.
of course. And then like probably 2 years into me doing that work, a really cool game came into my purview, and it was Sound Shapes
Oh,
from
fuck yeah.
Sound Shapes, was amazingly dope. And, everyone who worked in that game, like, I loved them with my whole heart. Um, and it was one of those things where I was like, "Oh, this is the thing that speaks to me." I love music. Before even the blog was a thing, I got my start in college radio as a DJ, and was doing that for a bit, and was like, "Oh, man, this is, like, touching all the things I love." I love music, and I love to be able to talk about video games and all this stuff. So, like, reached out to some of the folks who were making content in that space. And a couple weeks later, like, I was putting those interviews up, and I was throwing them up on the internet and putting them out so people could see it. And it was starting to get some traction. And then I get this email from Sony, and Sony is like, "Hey, we were thinking about doing the same thing and reaching out to some of the creators. Would you want to basically put your stuff up on the PlayStation blog?" And I was like,
Hell yeah.
"Hell yeah, I'm gonna hell yeah, I'm gonna definitely do that. What do you mean I'm gonna be able to do that every week and put up my stuff on a huge blog like that?" And that was kind of where the small point blog and like writing in a real way started for me. It was like I feel like I have a reasonable way with words, and people can at least understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Let me push this thing out and see where it takes me. And then, small point blog, it did okay and did some decent numbers. And then was like, no, nobody wants to read long form stuff anymore, so go away.
Of course not. Can I scroll the summary?
Yeah,
What's
can
your
I get a
final
little
paragraph? Does that tell me everything I need to know?
I need five bullet points. Thank you, please. Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's great. How hard is that struggle, that grind you're talking about of going to do your IT work and then coming home trying to do this, seeing a real opportunity, the PlayStation blog, which I assume this is even talking shit about PlayStation blog, I assume wasn't paid, right? They were just trying
No.
to feature your stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They threw that out there and gave me some love, and I appreciated that. I think that
Of
was
course, of course.
a huge thing for me. I mean, that grind is still fairly the same in weird ways. Like, I think about how long I've been doing this, which again doesn't even like it doesn't really even encompass like all the hours that you're thinking about a thing. Like,
Of
you're
course.
doing stuff, but you're thinking about your projects all the time. And even with Spawn on Me now, like, I do my 40 hours a week at work, and I probably definitely spend another 20 to 25 hours on everything else of like sending emails and doing all that stuff. And that hasn't stopped for the past, you know, 10, 11 years.
Jeez, man.
So like I've been pushing out stuff, or at least kind of trying to figure out good ways to get reasonable content out. Yeah, for probably like a decade plus at this point. So I'd come home, say what's up to girlfriend who is now my wife, and then, eat dinner, game a little bit, and then I'd probably be up to like 2 or 3 in the morning trying to
Damn,
get
dude.
stuff out, and then head to work at 9 in the morning, to try to see what the next step is gonna wind up being. And I've been probably doing that for probably, again, like 10 years or so. I don't sleep. Um, I don't sleep, and I still am trying to figure it all out because it is a hustle, like, better than anybody what it's like to try to figure out good ways to think about the content that you need to do, especially if you're trying to do it in a smart way. Um, but it's all the minutia of like trying to make a thing just work. So you have to call all the PR people, you have to, email them, you need to, set up the show, you need to make sure it
Sure.
sounds good. So it's all those things that happen. And then you're still trying to grow in on the social media side of it while still innovating in the spaces that you currently reside in. So you're like, this looks a little bit old and kind of janky. Oh, let me learn Photoshop today. Oh, this looks kind of old and janky. Let me figure out Premiere today. Like currently I'm trying to figure out how to use vmix instead of all this other stuff. So I'm currently adding things to my toolbox to make my job easier, but it's also amazingly time consuming.
Oh
Where
my
you're trying
god,
to
yeah,
figure out
totally.
how
And
am I.
that's the thing about it where I mean how you're talking about it of like, doing the emails, answering PR people, blah, blah, blah. Like I get that. Don't get me wrong. I get that hustle
Mhm,
because obviously, like when I started the YouTube channel, that was in my off hours, right? I was at IGN, I was doing it, but it was the inverse of what you're talking about to some respect, right? Where it was
mhm.
the email and the reviewing and the gaming and the PR contacts. That was all the 9 to 5, which is way longer than that. And then
Yep.
coming home and editing a video about Oreos was what I was doing to grow this channel,
Yeah.
which is the dramatically different part of this that I can't wrap my head around. When I hear that you've been doing it for 11 years, like I think only the people who create, only the people who are like doing irrational passions, right, are now blessing an okay beast before, but like now blessing here. Like you understand how hard that hustle is. And I think so many people who just consume the content, and that's, and I don't mean that in a dirty way, the people
Yeah.
who actually are the audience that get the podcast and download the stuff, it's so hard to wrap your head around what it is actually like to sit there and learn Premiere, which is, by the way, I need to do something. I'm opening Premiere. And then you start Googling, what the hell am I
Uh-huh.
doing?
Yep. Yeah, it's all those small little pieces of building yourself up to be a better content creator or a person who has those hats and wears those hats well, right?
Yeah.
So like I can remember, and to a certain extent, I've been doing a lot of this stuff on my own. Most recently we had a three-person show, which has gotten condensed down to just me, and there would be parts of that conversation that would be kind of handed off to some folks, and it get done, and then some of the stuff would kind of come back, and it wasn't up to the way I was hoping to have it done, because everyone has a creative vision for what they want to see as what they do, and sometimes it's just harder to be able to hand that stuff off when you have it all in your head. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
trying
Oh,
to
totally. Totally.
translate that stuff to other people. So, but the cool thing has been about that has been it has absolutely given me so many other tools to be able to use not only in my content creation life, but in my 9 to 5 life. So, like a lot of people, again, they do see the output of all that stuff, but they definitely don't get to see the like how many hours you took looking up every YouTube, tutorial of like
Totally.
how to make this motion graphic work and how to do this thing, and like, how much money you spend out of your own pocket that goes to making your dreams real and to trying to figure out ways to be able to do that. And then there's not even we haven't even touched the travel parts. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
going and networking at shows and learning how to do that as a big ass introvert, you know? Like, I am sure most people who meet me don't know that I'm an introvert. Like, they probably just don't even sense
I
it.
mean, I'm the same way, and I
Yeah.
always get crap for that, right? And when I say that, and people are like, "No, you're not. You're Greg. You're out there. You're loud. You're doing this. You're hosting." It's like,
Mhm.
well, yeah, that's like I fake it till I make it. But
Yep.
like in a perfect world, right? I am on the couch playing a video game, being quiet.
Yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah.
like playing the division, right? Like it's always that thing of like I want to play with other people, but I don't want to talk to anybody, so I don't feel like hitting up the clan and being like, "Hey, join up," and I just won't talk to you.
Yep. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's a lot of that stuff where you learn you learn to push yourself out of your comfort zones, which has been, probably when I think about all the stuff that has happened in the past, especially in the past 6 years of, like, getting things together and, again, you sharing that wonderful sentiment that people like me, in the
Mhm.
industry with the people again, it's like people who I looked up to are now peers. You know what I mean? I can
Yeah,
call up somebody in my phone and be like, "Hey, person who I used to look at your videos on TV or look at your videos on the internet," and now I can like shoot you a text message and be like, "Yo, what up?"
yeah,
Like those things to me still blow my mind every day because I don't take for granted how small this industry is,
yeah.
how well connected people are, and just that like I remember the year, I think it was probably like year 3 of me doing Spawn on Me when I came home and was like, "Oh crap, everybody's just like me trying to figure it all out at the same time. We have a lot of the same struggles and everybody's just a human being." Like, "Oh, you're not this like magical person who gets to rock a E3 stage. You're like a person who has to go home and figure out how to pay bills, and you
Totally.
poop, and you eat, and you do all that stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like all those things wind up kind of bringing it back down to a very human level, which I think is the most important part.
Well, it's funny you say that, right? Because I'm the other side looking at you where I do take it for granted. Where
Mm.
I think you when I started trying to when we were, trying to get you in for We Have Cool Friends and then we do today, but like looking back and thinking about questions and when I talk to you, it is that thing that I don't remember when you became a thing because
Yeah.
you were just a thing. It was like, oh, Kahlief, everybody loves Kahlief. Kahlief's awesome. He just spawned on me. He's amazing. He's doing great things for this industry and okay, great. Everybody just knew that.
Yeah.
And so it isn't like this moment where I think of like this breakout moment where you come through the wall like the Kool-Aid man and everybody's like, Kahlief.
It's weird because like for me in my own brain, I still haven't done anything yet.
Wow.
And that's the interesting part is like when people are like, "Oh, God, you killing it." I'm like, "I'm not killing it. You see my bank account? No, I'm not." I'm like, I can't like here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't necessarily get. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know where it lands, but it is a thing I think about often where the outward appearance of how people are doing. Like I'm very blessed. My family's doing well. Like I'm doing well in my 9 to 5 job, which came from podcasting. Um
What do you do now?
I work at Intel, so I work at Intel
Oh,
in their VR and esports department.
nice.
And that was dedicated. That's literally because I did Spawn on Me. Like
Nice.
I met enough people over the years to get me in a door, to be able to do that work. But one of the interesting parts about that is like for all the grind that I've been doing, some of that work kind of has paid off, and some of it hasn't, which has been hard to reconcile. Right. So it's like I love the fact that people dig me and that's the thing I want to leave as a part of this industry is like my quote unquote, I'm throwing up air quotes right now, like legacy of what I want to leave here is like I want to be a person who people liked and people cared about and thought that he did good work. But that doesn't necessarily translate over to your stuff doing well.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Of course.
I feel like that's the part right now that I have the most not worry about, but it is one of those things that when you think about, how you're doing, because you're always ranking yourself against other people. You're
Mhm.
always ranking your work against where you see other people's work and how they're getting things done and all that kind of stuff. And it makes me do two things. One, it makes me think about perspective. Like I think about my gamer tag radio fam all the time because they have been grinding for 15 years and
Yeah.
only in the past 7 or 8 or not even probably like in the past 5 or so have they really like skyrocketed into some whole other stratosphere of podcasting, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Um,
getting to do an episode with Phil Spencer, right?
yeah, you know what I mean? Like that took years and years. It took a decade and some change to be able to get to that point. Monetizing your show, like it takes a long time to get to a place where you feel like you can do that in a real way, and then have people like answer your emails in, in an actual way. And I have that struggle all the time where I'm like, I do really good work. I bust my ass to try to put out really smart, thoughtful stuff and try to hit angles that people don't hit. And, you know, Honey Boo Boo will come out of nowhere and blow my shit out the water. You know,
Dude, you
you know what I
just
mean?
encapsulated like my entire take on you is that it is such bullshit that you're not a bigger deal. Cause like what I think obviously, yeah, if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing. But on
Yeah.
the internet thing is the hot take, and it's
Mhm.
not having any nuance to it. It's not thinking it through. It's coming out and blasting, right? Like the
Mhm.
Danny DeVito. I just started blasting, but like you are the antithesis of that, where I see it happen all the time. There is something major going on in the industry. And rather than have a knee jerk, here's what I'm going to do, spit it out, you have a thread where you talk about it and you're always like, I'm going to do a podcast tonight about it. And
Yeah.
then you come back with an hour and a half, 2 hours, insightful content of
Mhm.
like, here's why this is offensive. Here's what this was. This is why this is a big deal. And here's the history of it. And here's what my perspective is. And like, it's so rare
Yeah.
that we find something that is binary. It's on, it's off, it's black, it's white, it's good, it's bad.
Right.
And 280 characters, that's what you always want to boil it down to. And you do
Right.
such a good job of not doing that and coming out insightful. And it's that thing of what you were talking about, nobody wants to read long form, right? It's a struggle to find an audience that wants long form video audio content.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's super hard to find that stuff. And I think to a certain extent, like I remember I remember having a mistake that I made, or it wasn't a mistake. I phrased the thing not well, and when I was doing Spawn Point blog, and it
Mhm.
was my best written article. It was the one that did the best,
Of
like
course.
really really well. And it basically posited that this person said a racist thing. Um, and to a certain extent, it wasn't racist. It was just like racially insensitive. I think there is a difference between the
Mhm.
two. Um, and at the time, I was hot, and I was like, "Yo, this thing is like making me mad. And how could you do this? And this is not important. Like, this is important to be able to get this distinction right." And I botched it, and then sent that person an apology later because I was like, "Yo, I fucked this up."
Yeah.
And not that it brought like, negative it brought negative attention to that person, which is a thing that they had to wind up dealing with because of my want to send out something that was terse and not really well done.
And also your honest reaction,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, there's part of that too, where the amount of times I write a tweet and then delete it, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Of like, this is how I actually feel, but
Yep.
like, I need to calm down. I would never do this.
Yeah. There's always collateral damage. Like, that's the thing that people don't remember, and I think that that's the thing that I always lay at the feet of my own work is that there's always collateral damage, no matter even if you write the most honest, pious thing that you feel like you could write, or make content towards, like, someone is gonna read that thing, someone's gonna be affected by that thing,
Mhm, mhm,
and you have to pay attention to not only the audience, but the person that's gonna on the other end of that thing. And I remember, you know, I run a fairly dev-centric show. Like, I care about developers, like, I care about the work that they do, and I care about, their livelihoods and their mental well-being. Like, we have so many brilliant, brilliant people who work in this industry who make the games that people talk shit about every day. And I'm like, no
exactly.
one goes to work trying to make a terrible thing. And also, they're just trying to get their job done. Like, they're trying to make a cool thing, and they could be using their brains to do any other thing but this. And you spend all your time on the internet talking crap about them.
Yeah.
And I remember going to GDC because I love GDC. GDC is one of my favorite conferences on the planet because you get to talk to developers about what they do in a really nice, nuanced way. And I think nuance is the most important thing we have left. Like, you can take that time to bark at people and you can take that time to do that stuff. But like, even in the most unreasonable circumstances, there is some nuance to be found in the conversation. And if you try to pluck that out for your audience, I think it makes your audience smarter. And I think it makes your audience better. And I think it makes the conversations around what you do even more useful to the industry. Because that's what I want. Like, I want to be useful not only to myself and to my family, but I want to be useful to the industry because the industry has given me a lot.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I want to make sure that we're paying attention to stuff like that in a real way. So when you start doing the hot take stuff, I kind of have to just be like, why? For what? You could take the extra 10 minutes to do that. You don't have to do that right now.
Yeah.
It's not that important. There are very few stories that come out of the gaming industry that are that important that you need to take a hot take on it. You know what I mean? Like,
No, 100%. No, I mean, you know me, you know the content we put out, and you're
yeah.
preaching exactly what I talk about. And the way that I think, the amount of times like people, and not kind of funny best friends. I think people will come into a kind of funny games daily off the headline and watch, and then get mad that we didn't drag someone through glass,
Right.
right? Because their game didn't do as well, or this they lied to us, and it's just like, well, I know that, and I can't say for every human being, but for the most part, whoever made that game or made that decision or did whatever wasn't out to screw you.
Yeah, yeah,
They weren't trying to ruin lives with this. They were trying to make something cool, and it didn't happen. And
yeah.
again, there are the examples where that is not the case. Someone is an asshole and they deserve to be drugged. But like, it's more often than not that. But that's not what you want to see when you show up off a headline.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people don't remember that part. They move forward with their feelings first. And I don't know. You could ask my wife if if she feels like this is a good trait that I have or not. But it's like I try to be pretty analytical about stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna try to remove my feelings from this thing right now at this moment, give it a space and detach it from the conversation and see like where the kind of X's and O's lay, and then try to figure out a good place to have a conversation there. Because again, it brings in more conversation parts to it. Like, it lets other people interact with it and enjoy it and consume it when you do some of that stuff. And then when you have to have a show that's like, yo, Dr. Disrespect has to go to jail, like, you have that conversation too, right?
Yeah.
You
But
pull
again, I mean, even that, like, that's what I'm talking. One of the examples I have of you, right? Where I think you came in and you're like, let's talk about this. Let's
Mhm.
not just react. Let's not just fume. Let's not just rage. Let's have a conversation about why Dr. Disrespect needs to go to jail.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, like I am lucky enough that I have done the work, in therapy and good conversations and all that stuff over the years to say, like, all right, what is my active listening telling me? Like,
Mm,
I understand that this is a part of the conversation where I'm feeling this thing. Let me repeat it back to myself in a way that I can hear it, bounce it off other people, and say, like, am I bugging out by saying this, by having this take? And people were like, "Nah, Kai, you're okay. You're right. Like that's a reasonable ass take that you just said
yeah.
right there." And I feel like that's the part that matters the most. Is like even when I'm being, fervent about my emotions and about the way I see the world, and you'll see my Twitter, you'll see my Twitter timeline where I can go from talking about the Xbox Series X, and then talk about white supremacy the next in the next tweet. Like we all contain multitudes, but it is one of those things of like you knowing where your audience lays, and also like you have a platform. Like I'm lucky enough to now have a version of that,
Yeah.
and I want people to understand that like you're gonna get various stuff from me, but I'm thinking about it in real ways. Like I'm not just putting it out just for the sake of putting it out.
And
Because I
that's the
think
normal
people
thing,
make
like what
mistakes
we
about
deal with too, right? Of that's bringing in the right people. You know what I
it.
mean? Like you talked about it earlier, but like there's always somebody or something you look at and you're like, damn, you're always chasing somebody, right? Nobody's
Yeah.
at the top of the pyramid. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, like there's those days where I put out an interview I think I'm super proud of, or a review we're super proud of, and you watch it struggle to get to 65,000 views on YouTube, right?
Yep.
And it's like, damn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, motherfucker. But those are the right 65,000 views on YouTube. Those are the right, whatever 100,000 downloads of it on the podcast services. That's the audience we've built that supports us and lets us do this. And like, I wouldn't trade that for a million views and a whole bunch of assholes who would never contribute or want to come to a live event or take care of kids on Extra Life.
Yeah, 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 and I think that that's a part of us too. Like, I of course want us to be, 10 times bigger than what we are, but like the family we've grown in Chicago, like those are some good ass people. Like we've
Yeah.
curated a really fantastic audience, and it's been great because we have ups and downs. We've had conversations about stuff that's like super personal. I've been being more personal of late because I feel like it's just useful not only to the audience but to myself.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been great to be able to see people come to that and then tell me later because I love my crew. I love my audience. We're just really quiet. And I'm just like, tell me stuff. Like, tell me what's happening. Tell me what you think about the thing that we're making, so I can try to figure out good ways to make it better. But when they do respond to stuff, it is always glowing, and it's always in a way where they're good about bringing in new people into the fold, that makes it known that the work is being done. Like the the major statement, about what we want to do on this planet and what Spawnamy wants to do as a show, that mission statement gets hit every week. And we still continue to push that out. And that's been the North Star for what we decided to do here. And like it's been great to be able to see like that stuff come back in good ways, where I'm just like, oh, that was the thing that I was feeling down today. And you just told me that that was put into a, some journal in some college somewhere. Like
Yeah.
you have a notation somewhere in some book that our show did a thing.
So
Um,
talk
yeah.
to me about that, because we've gotten in your story, right, to Sound Shapes PlayStation blog. It's your first, like, the door gets open kind of thing. You start finding more audience and more, I guess, gusto.
Yep.
Where do we transition over to Spawn on Me as we know it, with podcasts and a crew and Bricago and everything?
Yeah. So like right after, like right towards the end of Spawn Point blog happening, I was playing some 2K on on Twitch,
As one does.
as one does. That's the only place you can play 2K is on Twitch. Um, and I had someone in the chat jump in and was like, "Hey, I heard that you were looking for a writer. Are you looking for a writer?" And it wound up being Cicero who joined the crew like a couple months later. We had like a really dope, fantastic phone call, which is the thing that you young kids need to start doing.
Just
Um,
text me. I hate
Text
phone
me.
calls.
What does this emoji mean? It's a smile, but it's a sideways smile. And we had a really dope like 2 hour conversation just about like, what he wanted to do and like how he thought that he could help with the show. And then I brought him on board. And then Sharif Jackson joined up later on. If you're not paying attention to stuff they're doing really quick, Rivals of Waterdeep, fantastic D&D show, all POC cast. Check that stuff out on Twitch. Um, and we all gathered up. Like Reef and I did a show even before I did the blog, actually. So we did a show called Character Select on Google Plus. That was this weird, ridiculous, just like panel thing that we did with like 7 people, all talking about video games on Google Plus at like 320p, killing it, making great content. And then Reef and I were like re found each other and then kind of jumped on the show and doing all that kind of stuff. And we kind of pushed from there. We were like, the first year was a little bit rough because we just didn't know what to do. It's all the technical bits that go along with trying to make a podcast grow. And then year two, we really had like a milestone show with Evan Narcisse. So Evan Narcisse came on and he had just written an article about black hair and how black hair is never done well in video games and how it lends to all these other conversations that about representation and all that stuff.
Sure.
And we finished the show. We kind of looked at each other through the internet, through our Google Plus channel screens, and we were like, "Holy shit, that's what it is! Like, that's what we need this show to be about. We need to
Be
focus
that
on
voice.
that stuff. Yeah, we need to be that voice. Like, we have the ability to do that thing because no one's doing it.
Yeah.
There's like literally one other show that was kind of tackling issues from a marginalized person of color perspective. Not Your Mama's Gamer, which is also a fantastic show and still running. Um, and we had that conversation. And we were like, oh, so this is what this needs to be. And then we tried to figure out a good mission statement for it. How do you make this a big tent kind of deal? And how do you talk about things on a weekly basis that kind of go through that? And we sat there and we were like, oh, I have a prism that I don't really share because people don't necessarily care about it. But how can we bridge that out? How can we build that out into a thing? And that's when Sponomy kind of started, like 6 years, some from not today, but like early January. But it began to grow from that particular thought process of like, no one's doing this. Like, why don't we take the mantle and keep pushing it?
Sure.
We have to. Like, if no one is going to do it, then why not us?
Well, it's back to what I always tell people, right? Of like, you have to find your voice in this. You have to find this. I mean, I'm usually applying this to like JRPGs, like your niche, right? Like you have to find something that you don't see being spoken to, and
Right.
then go make that. Because if you try to be another IGN, there's already an IGN. So why would anybody come to you?
Right. Right. And those bigger outlets, like they have a very special thing that they do. And then when we figured out that people actually wanted to listen to it, that was when everybody was like, "Oh, this is gonna be cool."
Well,
'Cause
that's been the best part of it, right? I mean, is in terms of like not seeing it, you go make it, you find the audience, and then now you're starting to like reap those rewards, right? You start to see the diversity come into this industry.
yeah, and I feel like it's again like one of those right place, right time kinds of things because around the time that we started our show is when the conversation really started to pop off around diversity in games in that way. You know, it was a thing that people were kind of tiptoeing around. People were always thinking about it, but didn't really have a space to kind of have that conversation and like bring in industry people into the fold to do it, which I think is also one of the things that makes the show really special for me is the fact that, you know, I can count on one hand shows that bring in everyone from super indie developers to like Aaron Greenberg. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And we're like one of the only shows with people of color that is doing that show.
Yeah.
And that to me even blows my mind even more. Or just to be like, huh, we really did pull something off. In an interesting way. Of like we really like set a thing out and we had our list of people who we wanted to have on the show like year one. Me and Cicero, we sat down and was like wrote our guest list of like who are the people we want to have on the show, even if we were, like super lucky to be able to snag them. First person was Dave Fenoy.
Nice.
Dave Fenoy was like the first person on the list, and then I remember the day Cicero like sent out the email. He was like, "Yo, I don't know, should I send this email out to Dave Fenoy? I got his email address." I was like, "Yo, fam, do it." We were like sitting there, like just rubbing our hands together, like Birdman, the Birdman gif, like, yo, please, please, please let it happen. And like an hour later, Dave Fino was like, Bird, I'm down. And we freaked the hell out. We freaked out. And it was fantastic because we were like, yo, this worked. Like, who
Yeah.
knew? Um, and that was huge for us. Like, that was one of those things where we jumped a big hurdle of learning that, closed mouths don't get fed, and,
Yep.
the worst thing someone can say is no,
Yep.
and then you keep pushing and you see what you can get, and, 350 plus guests later at this point, a show that was done from my kitchen table and his kitchen table that is now moved into my back room is phenomenal in that space. Like, I'm very proud of the pedigree that we've been able to build up, and how we've been able to snag people who a lot of people just don't get through the work that we do. So that's been the biggest thing about how happy I am about some of the stuff on the show.
So, you know, talking about the length of time that, I mean, a decade of this, of doing the show and building for this and chasing this dream, do you have an end goal? Like, are you trying to get to an IGN, a GameSpot, a Kind of Funny, or whatever? Or is this life for you? You don't need it to be the full-time gig.
Um, I mean, get rich or die trying, baby. Yeah. Um, I think it's twofold, right? Where, there are a couple of things that I would love to be able to do. Like, and I think about this in kind of the holistic ways of, like, what's the win state for a person who's starting to make content? Or if you've been making content for a while, like, what's the thing that you can, like, lay your hat on and say, all right, I'm done. And I think to a certain extent, you know, the initial conversation was like, I wanted to be in your position, right? It's like, have a version of Kahlief funny that I would do, and pull in a whole bunch of people, and make a make a studio, and like make all that cool stuff and do all those things. I don't know if we're ever going to get there, to be honest. Like, we just don't have the numbers to make that happen. um and I don't know if that's just a longevity thing. I started a little bit later in the game than most people. I started in my late 20s, early 30s, about all the stuff. So, like, I'm behind a lot when it comes to that thing. I look at what I do in this space as like the kid on a 10-day NBA contract. I'm like, every 10 days, I'm like, yo, are we still pushing? Yeah, we
They
still
gotta
pushing.
re-up? They gotta re-up?
Yeah, they're gonna re-up, they're gonna re-up. Yeah, it's that basically. And I think that, I have two sets of things that I would love to do. One, I want to be like the Ava DuVray, or of gaming in that space. Like, I wouldn't mind being, a person who is making content with other people, like making, no clip esque kind of content, but focusing on POC folks in the space.
Sure.
Or, the Tyler Perry of gaming in that way, where
Oh my
you
god.
get to make so many different versions of good content that, again, speaks to stuff. And then I have like side projects that are in my head too. Like, I have this really dope idea for a game show that I want to do, and I just need people to rock with it, and I need like the assets to build that stuff out. Like, um, multiple things. And then there's the part of me that's just like, this has another 2 years to go, and I'm gonna sunset it.
Wow.
Like, there's that
Yeah.
part too, where, if the numbers are there to sustain it, then it makes sense to do it. But like, from a financial standpoint, my wife and I have had many conversations over the past 6 years
I
about
can
like
imagine.
how the Adams family income has been, sustaining Spawn on me, and she understands what it means to me, and that it does actual good work for the industry and in the world, through the charity stuff that we do, and then also just like, giving people a space to kind of look at the work. But that's a big financial burden to keep pushing, on the fam like that. And we've been lucky enough to have some pretty good support on Patreon, but it is one of those things too where, you need a spot to be able to see the growth in a huge way, and you need to see like that ROI kind of be a real thing.
Of course.
And
Yep.
sadly, we haven't necessarily hit those numbers yet.
Are you
Um,
br and I don't mean to be too personal, you tell me to
no,
fuck off. Are you
no.
breaking even on it, or is this just
Oh
running at a
no.
loss? No.
We've been running out of loss forever.
Oh, no. I like
Oh no.
that.
No. No, we were running out of loss forever.
Yeah.
And some of that is, I will not bullshit you or the people listening. Like, I have an idea of what I want Spawn to be, and that costs money. Like, you need technology to make a thing look nice. You need technology to make, have a decent running PC to be able to stream and play games at the same time. Like, a lot of that money is like me coming out of pocket to do that stuff. But also, like, it's always been money, like before we even did Patreon stuff, of like me just going to conferences. Like,
Yeah.
you go to E3 for a couple of days, you bust your ass for 4 days, you spent a grand and some change.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
You know what I
easy,
mean?
easy.
Easy. And I'm like, I think about every business card that I've gotten, And then every email that I've sent, and I was like, that was worth the money.
Yeah.
That was worth the money. That was worth me trooping out and figuring that stuff out. That was worth me doing all that stuff. And it really depends on, where things wind up going in terms of, metrics and all those things, but also really depends on like how much steam do I have left. I used to want to be the person on front of stage and like doing the E3 presentation and doing all that stuff. They're not gonna want to see my old ass on stage, Greg. They're not gonna want to see that. Like I understand that also. Like you have a very finite amount of space and time to be able to be that person.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing it yourself. Like we've seen, Leo Laporte doing this thing for God knows how long, right?
Yeah.
He's been doing Twit forever, but it's his. Like he doesn't have to ask someone else to be the person who's like, hey, hey Jeff Keighley, can you let me host the Game Awards? Keighley, you should let me host the Game Awards. But it's one of those things of like, if you don't own it, you can't. You have to wait for other people to help do that stuff.
Totally.
So yeah, that's a long-winded answer to a very short question. But yeah, like
No, but I mean, these aren't small decisions. This is your life. These aren't these, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to worry about being long-winded.
yeah, I have a lot of cool stuff that I feel like is still left on the table. Like I'm a little bit sad as well that like some of those things may not get done, but if at the end of everything, me getting a way to work in the industry, maybe not in a front facing way, through the work that I do now at Intel and, whatever happens in the future, like that to me is a win. Like that's set my life up for a good position, which is what most people don't get to say when they make content. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? They
mhm. Yeah, no,
they don't
totally.
get to kind of sit back and say, well, like I have the ability to like do well in my actual 9 to 5 life, and that has been one of the cool things that's podcasting has afforded me is the ability to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm always lucky and I always have perspective about that stuff. It's like this is not easy, but it's worth it, and it's and it's
Totally.
and it's, and it's worth all the pushing.
And your wife's still on board with all this.
I
We're
think.
going from the girlfriend to this.
Hmm. Hmm.
Never getting to see you at night. You're exhausted all the time, I assume. I
I
know that
mean,
I know it well.
yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt, and it's one of those funny things because like she wasn't on board at first,
Yeah.
and that was a really interesting conversation because she was a social worker before we met. She's now working in tech spaces, but she was a social worker, and that's how we first met. And I remember one of the first times she came over to the crib to come hang out, and I was playing of one version of a Mortal Kombat game where people getting their guts ripped out and everything's happening, and she's like, "Are you like? Do we need to have a conversation about like how you look at the world and stuff?" And I was like, "Look, you already have to understand something. Like games have been here before you, they will be here for the rest of our relationship. So you maybe need to figure that part out. We'll figure it out together. But like games aren't going anywhere. This thing has like saved my ass in literal ways. So we'll figure out good ways to have that conversation. And then now she's totally like down with it. Like she understands, it's a part of community for me. It's a part of, fighting my introversion. It connects me to people,
Sure.
and it's given me, ways to be able to learn and to grow within the roles that I have because I'm just constantly trying to bust ass and figure good things out.
So, with everything you just said and
Mhm.
everything we've just talked about,
Yep.
how does this coronavirus stuff affect what you do?
I mean, it's killed every conference that's going to come down the line for the next at least 6 months.
Right?
Um, like, I mean, I was supposed to be rocking with you today, like in person, and
Right?
that didn't happen, and I was really looking forward to that. I had an outfit ready and everything.
And I mean, that's again back to it, right? Like the thing I think it's so easy to lose sight of like, okay, GDC's gone. That sucks, you know what I mean? But we'll still get game news and yada yada. In a very, grain of rice specific sense with you, right? Like I was
Mhm.
so stoked to have you come in, do the show with me in the morning for Games Daily, then go do the We Have Cool Friends with Xavier Woods, right? And like
Right.
help amplify your voice to bring in new Spawn on Me fans for more people to figure out how awesome Kahlief is, right? Like that's how this goes. And that's for small creators the way this works. And it's what I was talking about when E3 got canceled. And I was like, listen, I'm gonna miss E3 too, but I know it doesn't end what Kind of Funny does. Like we can react anywhere, but it's these
Right.
moments of being able to collaborate. It's this moments of you go to a demo and get something no one else got. And so your
Mhm.
video gets sourced on IGN and people find you. Like there's so many ripples to it.
Yeah, it touches a lot of the stuff that you want to do, because the thing that most content creators do, and especially what I do, is like, and I think I do really well, is forecast out, right? It's like trying to forecast out what's going to drop, how to align that stuff, not only with the content that I want to produce, but like reaching out to people for PR stuff. Like people have been asking me, like, how did you get that Media Molecule interview that you got a couple years ago, or whatever? I was like, that took a year.
Yeah.
How'd you get that Zoe Quinn interview where she was like the only, like literally the only podcast that was ever done was your show? I was like, that took a year of
Yeah.
like constantly having conversation and having people talk back and forth, and making sure people are safe, and trying to figure out all that stuff, and then those are all compounded by going to shows throughout the year. And to a certain extent, like, it'll save my wallet, it'll save the family wallet this year, that things are going that not are not happening. But like the ability to go and get face to face time with people is so important. I think a lot of folks who are starting this work, who don't do this work often, they think that you can just lay back and kind of just like send the email out. And it works, but it doesn't work as well as me walking up on you and shaking your hand and saying hello.
Yep. Putting a
Now,
face to that name.
yeah, putting a face to that name and like, oh, this is the work that you do. Let me tell you, what the deal is, if you haven't heard about what I do. And I think to a certain extent, like, it won't really affect spawn on me in a real way besides my own mental health. Like, I'm doing okay and I'm feeling fine. Like, I'm used to being in the home by myself, being in the crib by myself anyway. So like, I'm not really that really, put out, but I grieve for all the people who are like contractors and freelancers and other folks who are like doing the hosting work that you do, that I want to do more of,
Yeah.
that are like not going to be able to do that stuff because there's literally no show to go to.
And that's what I've been trying to stress to people again is like it's, everybody's case by case by case, but
Mhm,
there are so many of our friends and our we
mhm.
have cool friends people that are independent contractors and don't have a 9 to 5 and do the hosting gigs and rely on a GDC or a E3 or a Gamescom or a whatever, going and hosting wherever, hosting for, Facebook, doing IGN work, whatever. And the fact that those jobs are gone now drastically affects, I think, when all this is done and we
Mhm.
get to PAX West, hopefully, knock on wood, right? Or at least get to GDC next year or
Yep.
E3, who's going to still be standing? Like the industry on the side of consumers and podcasts and all that stuff is going to look dramatically different.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about the way that the entertainment has changed since that like 90s writer strike. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you remember that? Like, that
Yeah. Oh,
was a
yeah. Yeah.
huge thing that
Man.
changed the face of entertainment in the way that we know it. We wouldn't have reality TV if that wasn't a thing that happened back then.
Yeah.
The stuff that we do now, it will democratize some of the way that, some people will be able to bubble up their content. I think to a certain extent, this will wind up being a blessing and a curse, where you'll find folks who are still trying to make their work happen will find kind of smart and innovative ways to be able to do that stuff.
Yep.
But the thing I hope doesn't happen is that need or that want from organizations and companies to feel like you can just virtualize everything,
Hmm.
because you need good people kind of like hosting a thing. Like, you can tell when a thing is not done well because it doesn't have someone helping to guide and run a ship, even if they're not like the people who are, crafting it, but they understand how to work a crowd. They understand how to, usher people in and off of content and segments and things like that. Like, it's a huge thing to do that stuff well. It's one of the reasons why I love your work so much, is like, you've done that work so well over the decade, that people look at that work and they're like, oh, this is just a part of Greg being Greg at this point.
Sure. Sure.
But you've had so many reps in to do that work well,
Totally.
that it makes a lot of sense for people to tap you on the shoulder to do that stuff. And I think that there's a lot of people, Andrea as well, like, I look up to her so much because she
Mm,
busts ass all the time
me too.
and is like such a champion and like such a professional. Like, she kills it every time she gets in front of a microphone and a camera.
Yep.
And you need people who, again, like, do that work, because it is a, that like usherance of people kind of through the industry and stuff. And I've been lucky enough to grab my spot once in a while, but it's also been, you know it gives me a lot of hope for the way that people will kind of come to the content is that, people will look at it in different ways and kind of figure out smart ways to kind of incorporate it in the ways that they will find whatever the new world is going to wind up being. You know what I mean?
And that's my hope too. You know what I mean? Again, like giving new voices and new takes a way to get it. It's I've talked about it, a lot on Games Daily as we've gone through with the cancelizations around Corona, and it being the idea that like if we're all getting the same demo online, right? I
Hmm.
talked about like how many podcasts of that can you listen to of us and IGN and GameSpot and MinMax talking about it, right? But then you get into the other realm of okay, if you're sick of hearing the same group of bearded white guys talk about this demo, what is it going to be for you? What is your take? You know what I mean? I think I'm hopeful that it will actually make people go, man, I want to hear this from a voice I don't, hear from enough, or what's my perspective? Why isn't it being represented? And make them more hungry to go find that. But then it's about sharing and it's about opportunity. And there's like so many different pieces to this machine.
Yeah, like I tell people all the time because I get the question often behind the scenes of like, how can I help you grow in the space that you're in? I'm like, share my shit.
Yeah. Right.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
share it and like literally tell people to go subscribe to it. Like that's the thing that I tell people all the time. I was like, there isn't a beat around the bush way of it where you're being passive about it. Like sharing it, even in sharing it is an active thing, but it still is not the use your voice as a person with a platform to say, I believe in this content. I believe in what Kahlief does. I think it brings value to the industry. You should be subscribing to that thing. Because that changes the way that people think about it. Because humans are weird in that way. Like humans will find every way to circumvent or skirt doing a thing because it's not like thrown in their face to be like, do this now. Like, let me snatch you up by your collar and do it.
No, dude, the
Um,
amount of times like right, we like you put out I remember when I started the YouTube channel and I had like something like I don't know 60,000 Twitter followers, and I put out the YouTube links, and I'm like, oh, I'm putting out this link. Clearly, 50,000 people click through and watch this because they like me, and
yeah, yeah,
you get these videos get like 5,000 views. Like, what the fuck?
yeah, yeah. It's hard. I mean, and that's the thing of like you need anyone and everyone who has a platform bigger than you to share that stuff out. Like I remember very distinctly the day that there were a couple of things that really like pushed Spawn and me into a great space. One was Adam Sessler jumping on the show and rocking with me. That was amazing because that was also one of our bucket list kind of things. Getting to meet Robin Haneke in person and becoming friends has been huge for me and for us. Danny O'Dwyer rocking a Chicago shirt on Giant Bomb on an E3 panel was huge, and then coming on your show, for the first time was huge too. And then Witta rocking my face shirt,
Yeah,
on the show too. Like those five things in terms of like people with huge audiences, with lots of people who understand what we do and understand how important it is using their power for good in that way. And that's what it is. It takes people like sharing that stuff out and pushing it hard and understanding that collaboration is what makes it work. Because like people didn't know who I was before I jumped on KF. Like they were like, "Who's this cat?" Like I don't know who this is.
yeah,
And then after that, a whole bunch of people jumped on the show and like checked it out and paid attention to it and did all that stuff. And now we still have lots of folks who are best friends who from that first initial appearance have stuck with us and like talk about the work that we do as being good work and that they wanted it. So yeah, you got to push, you got to ask people to help, and you have to not be worried about asking people to help. Like
yep.
that's huge. Like I will absolutely now at this point be like, yo, can you send out a tweet about this thing that I'm doing? Can you share it with your audience? Because if not, then like who else am I gonna do that to the audience that I have? You know?
And people get it, right? Like it's I the amount of times I've been asked or I have asked for help or whatever, right? It's like I've never responded like, "What? Get out of here!" Or have I had somebody be like, "You're really crossing a line right now."
Yeah, like I remember very specifically, again, like everything that has happened to me. And it's the reason why when people ask me for stuff now, even though, again, like my platform isn't huge, but people know me, again, air quotes, um, where I will always take time to like shoot people an email back, or I will always take time to answer that DM if I see it in a reasonable, form or fashion. And I've had people ask me everything from, how do I talk about race on my show to how the hell do I get people to jump in a phone call about, doing a show, like the actual literal, steps to take to make a video podcast happen. And I will absolutely take time to do that. Hoarding information is one of the things I hate the most on this planet. Like, there's
Yeah.
no reason for it. I wouldn't be here if someone didn't literally hold my hand and walk me through a Sony party at E3 a couple of years ago. Sean Alexander Allen, massive love to you, and Sterling McGarvey, who is out there as well. Like, they have held me down.
Good
And, like,
people.
Sean literally held my hand and walked me into and snuck me in into a Sony party. And I met Shuhei that day. I met the heads of Media Molecule that day. I met the folks over at Gorilla that day. It was a huge day for me because someone took the time to do it. Like, I remember the first time I met Rami Ismail. I was at Indiecade East some years ago. And I walked up to him nervously, and I'm like twice his age at this point. I don't know why I was nervous. I was like, I was dead older than you, Rami. I love you, Rami. But he was like sitting in a corner chilling, doing some work. And I was like, sheepishly, it was like the first time I had done an interview, and I didn't actually do an interview with him. I did it with somebody else because I was nervous. Um, and I was like, he was like, "Hey, do you want to see what the back end of Steam looks like?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I want to see what the back end of Steam
That
looks like."
sounds very much like Rami.
Yes, it was almost Rami, and it was like, I was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, I want to see what the back end of Steam is." Thinking it was going to look like Magic and Magical Wonderland stuff, and I was like, "Oh, this shit looks like Windows folders. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it! It's not what I was hoping it
This
would be."
isn't fun.
Yeah, I was like, "This is not fun at all." But again, it was like one of those things where someone decided to take an extra minute or two out of their day to show me some kindness and show me a thing to help me learn. And that's huge. Like, that is a big thing about this industry, is like there are so many wonderful people in it who will absolutely take the time to give you a moment of their day to show what they know. You just have to be open to it, and you have to not be scared to take it.
Do you think, we've talked about the grind so much and
Mhm.
obviously how much you're at it and these hours you work and all this stuff. Is that the New York in you? Because I always talk about it no matter what I've done or achieved or whatever. Like, and don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm like Michael Jordan over here or anything. But like, we have a business that is able to be successful, knock on wood, coronavirus notwithstanding, and a million other things. But like, no matter anytime I go to New York and I walk around New York, I am like, I'm insignificant. There are millions of people all around me on the street in these buildings. We are ants. We are ants, and nothing we do matters.
It definitely, like, growing up in New York and like maneuvering within New York spaces just gives you such a different perspective on life.
Yeah.
Because it is the most beautiful you ain't shit state and city on the planet, which is great, and it sets you up for good ways to deal with other people, right? Like, there's a thing that people say all the time of like New Yorkers are rude and they're impatient and stuff. And I was like, impatient, yes, and rude, sure. But like at the end of it, you have millions and millions of people who are stacked up on top of each other. You would hate that energy too if you were doing that for a bunch of your life. Like, I tell young people all the time, I'm like, go to New York for 2 years and then leave. Like, go hang out, learn what it's like to live in New York. Because once you live there, you can live literally anywhere else on the planet.
Yeah.
And that hustle absolutely comes from there. Like, I remember so many odd jobs that I had over the years. I've done everything from working in the public school system as a school aide, to doing IT work, to being a door-to-door salesman, to being a process server. I was like rolling up on people, giving them divorce papers
Oh no.
and all this. I was like in a car tailing someone like I was a freaking detective at some point. Like, I've had so many different jobs, and I think that that hustle spirit has helped me when it comes to the work that I do now, because I just don't care about no's like I used to.
Mm,
Like, I used
mm.
to get really down about no's, and I still get down about no's, don't get me wrong. Like, there are things that I've been sending emails out to people forever, and I'm just like, no email at all. Um, but that hustle spirit pushes you, and it lets you understand that, like, even as hard as you're pushing, there are people who are pushing twice as hard as you, not even because they need to, it's because they have to. Because that city is rough, and that city doesn't care about your feelings, and it doesn't care about your circumstances. It just needs you to push. And if you're not pushing, you're not moving. It's very Gary Whitta esque in that respect.
Stop
Um,
giving Witta so much credit. I'm never gonna hear
love
the end
you,
of it.
love you, Whitta. I love that man. But it is one of those things. It's like, I have been lucky enough over the past couple of years, especially once I moved to Portland, Portland, Oregon, that was a huge thing that I miss now because everyone here is very passive aggressive,
Oh,
and I'm
really?
used to aggressive.
You're used to them just telling you straight up that pissed you off.
Yeah, they're like, "Yo, fuck you, Kyle." I'm like, "Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. Oh my god, that feels so good to hear that. It just makes me feel like I'm at home." And you don't get that stuff here. And it has changed the way that, you kind of maneuver because you're just like you're working off other people's energy as opposed to like kind of dictating the conversation in that way. But that has absolutely, definitely structured the way that I work. When we were like a three-person team, we're all from the East Coast, and the East Coast vibes are just different than West Coast vibes in that way.
Yeah.
And it's been funny because since I married my wife who's from the Midwest, like there's also a very interesting space between Midwestern work ethic energy and then East Coast work ethic energy. And both of them are very similar. It's just one comes with pie and the other one comes with a with a subway bus pass. It's like, no, you got to keep going, kid. You got to keep moving.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's changed a lot in the way that I think about the work. And it's definitely like a underlying current. It's like it's like Ghostbusters 2 with the slime,
I
river
love it.
slime.
Hit me with it. Yeah.
And it's definitely like New York energy is like the reverse slime. It's like it's always there. It's trying to mess with you. It's trying to kind of push you in a direction, and you have to either fight it or just absorb it and kind of keep taking it on and doing it. So yeah,
I, of course, want to open the show up to the best friends in the segment we call Friend Zone. But before then, I have one quick, completely left turn question
yeah,
that is from what, an hour and 10 minutes ago. But I want to
mhm,
ask if that's all right.
mhm,
You talked about going to live with your grandma and her taking care of you, her becoming mom.
yeah.
Did you ever reconcile with mom and dad? Was there ever closure there?
Some yeah. So like I had only really seen my mother twice in my life. I saw her once when she came to the house to come see us,
Mhm.
and sadly she was strung out. And my grandma was like, "Nah, you can't come in the house because you're a danger to everyone in the house."
Your grandmother's fucking awesome.
My grandma was no joke. She cussed like a sailor. She was one of the best people on the planet because she just didn't get like when you get old enough when you just don't give fucks.
I hope to get there one day.
You will, because I'm like I'm starting to get there. I'm 42 this year, so I'm starting to get there. I think it hits around 50 where you just like give no fucks.
Yeah,
And ever since I've known her, since I was a person on the planet, she just gave no fucks. Most caring, amazing woman on the planet, but she would tell you in a minute you ain't shit. And it would push you to like do work. It would like push you to like make a thing happen.
sure.
Um, so that was the first time I saw my mother. And then the second time I saw my mom was when she was super, super sick. She was on a vent. She was on a ventilator.
Gotcha.
I went to the hospital to see her, and it's one of those weird like disconnects between what you know of your parents and when you see your parents.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what to do because like she's on this vent, she can't talk, she's like really in a bad spot, and everyone around me is crying, they're like bawling, they're like, oh my god, what are we going to do, she's in this bad state. And everyone comes together when things go really bad, you know what I mean, like when family, even if you're disconnected and you're not really together, people will figure out in their soul to be able to do that work. And I couldn't cry. And I just
Mhm.
couldn't cry. And I didn't know why I couldn't cry. And I was like, I just don't know you. You're a stranger sitting on a bed. It's like me watching an alien movie. I don't know
Sure.
what's happening
Sure.
right now. And I couldn't cry. And I remember that, and I had that energy with me for a very long time because I just didn't know what to do with it. And I felt broken for a bit because I was like, how am I not gonna cry about the person who like brought me into the planet? I was like, I was in your body and now I'm like don't have emotional ties to you.
Yeah.
Then later on, she got better. She got well, she got off drugs, which was fantastic. She had I have two half brothers who were kind of estranged, but we see each other from time to time.
Mhm.
We talk to each other, I should say. And it was nice to be able to see her towards the end of her life, find some grounding people within it to kind of help her, mitigate the drug addiction and things like that. But we were never really tight, and always sad about that because the conversations I hear about her was that she was a brilliant musician. She was amazingly smart. She was like whip smart when it came to things. She had a really fun sense of wit, which I'm hoping I have. stolen from her in some form or fashion. And then my dad, which is
Hold
the
on one second, Kahlief.
yeah,
If you can imagine this in this middle of this heartwarming story,
yeah.
I have to open. No, there goes my wife. It's it's one of those things. Work from home, and I don't know if you heard me earlier on Games Daily. The sink exploded, and
Oh,
it's
no.
somebody, and the person just came to knock on the door. My wife's on it. Everything's fine. Sorry.
Okay,
This
no
is
worries.
the fun part of working from home now.
No,
And your dad. I apologize.
no worries. And my father, who I didn't know was alive, like, literally, I was like, "He had to have been alive because he had me." I know how sperm and eggs work. I know how that happens. Um, but I didn't know where he was. And I came home, I was probably 17 or 18, maybe a little bit older, and I had, like, my own dedicated phone line in the house because I wanted to talk to girls,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
of course, and I see this
Kids today will never know the struggle with their cell phones.
oh, they will never know what a landline is. It's
Yeah.
funny. Or an answer machine. Like, what the hell is that? So I checked my answer machine and I got this really interesting message. And this woman is on the other end of it. And she's like, "Hey, if your mother's name is this and your father's name is this, then I am your half sister." And I was like, "Holy shit. Bill collectors are amazing these days. They are figuring out all ways to snatch you up and get your money back from all your college debt." So I called her up and we talked for like an hour. And I was like, "You have the names right? You have all the stuff right? Like, what is the deal?" She was like, "Hey, I'm your half sister and your father is alive." And I was like, "What? Like, what is happening right now?"
Yeah.
Threw my whole world into some weird spiral. Um, and found out that my dad was still alive. He was in jail because he was a drug dealer uh back in Harlem. And she was like, "Hey, if you ever want to talk to him, I gave him your number." I was like, "Hey, that's a little bit a little
Hey,
bit
this was cool for a second, and now you've crossed a line.
wow, you've like broken all privacy laws. Like, what is going on? What is happening right now?" And it was interesting. So like we spoke a couple times while he was in jail. We had like a couple conversations, and it's always that super weird initial conversation because I'm like, do I call you dad? Do I call you by your first name? Do I call
Yeah.
you pop? Whatever the hell you're supposed to call the person who brought you into the world who's a man. Um, and we didn't really have a relationship, but we actually like met. So we met, he had a hospital visit. And he was like, "Hey, can you come with me to my hospital visit?" And I was like, "Sure, okay. I guess I'll come to you with your hospital visit." So we went and we had like a sit down conversation in the waiting room. He had his examination. And then like the interesting part about that part of the story is like you have all this pent up stuff that you always wanted to say to your parents, right? If you've never met them, you're like, I had gotten past the like I hate you stages of my early teens, and then when I was like 13, I was like, I hate my dad, I hate my mom, they didn't care about me, blah blah blah. And then you get to a kind of like settled space where you're just like, you're a human being, shit happens, like circumstances are there. What do we want to talk about? And I was like, I have questions for you. Literally, I was like, I had a list of questions. I was like, how did you meet my mother? Why did you turn her on to drugs? Like, why were all these? I hit him with all the hard knock, like
Hey, dude,
Dr.
this is
Phil,
your shot, right? Shoot your
Dr.
shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I hit him with all the Dr. Phil ass questions that I could hit him with. And he sat there and humbled himself and answered each and every one of those questions. And I gave him so many props for being able
Wow.
to do that. Um, and then sadly, he passed away a couple years later from cancer. And the kind of bookend of that story was he was doing okay. He was like in the hospital. He was doing all right for a couple of days. And then my sister calls me up and she's like, "Hey, you should go see your dad. You should go see your dad. You should go see him." And then at that point, he was still doing all right. And I had just been putting it off because I just was super busy, just working and doing all the stuff. I get one last call and she's like, "You need to go see your dad now because he can't talk. Like he's just like incapacitated. He can't say anything. You need to go see him." I get out of work. I bust out of work. I go roll over there to go talk to him. He can't say a word. I hold his hand. I'm like, "Hey, Pop, I'm here for you. Like, I don't know how to help you, but I'm here. Um, if there's anything I can do, like, let me know. And I'll see you tomorrow." I leave him, let go of his hand, get in a cab to go home. 10 minutes later, my sister calls me up. She's like, "Your father passed away."
Damn.
And I was like, "Oh shit. Was he waiting for me? Was he waiting for
Wow.
me to get there to see me for the last time?" Because I'm his only son. He had nothing but daughters, prior to, or post that. And I was like, "Oh, man, like, that's a heavy thing to rock with
Yeah,
your
yeah.
conscience." Be like, "Yo, somebody was waiting for me to say 'hey' before they leave the planet forever." Like, that is real deal stuff to deal with and, like, sit down with, and I was like, you know, in the grand scheme, it, like, gave me a bunch of perspective, right? It's like, I don't have a lot of beef with people anymore. Like, I don't carry that energy with me. Like, I have people who have done me wrong and who I don't want to do stuff with because of whatever reasons, but I don't
You
hold
don't have
grudges.
ill will for him.
Yeah, I don't hold grudges anymore. I used to hold grudges like for real grudges. Like, you dead in the ground. I'm like, I still hate you.
Yeah,
But I don't do that anymore because I feel like everyone is waiting to figure out validation. Everyone has the ability to have a redemptive moment. Um, and sometimes you just have to rock with people while they get there.
yeah.
And if you can do that, then, people can leave wherever they're at in a good spot. And that was a huge day for me in a lot of different ways, and it taught me a lot. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
No, thank you for asking. That was dope.
No, anytime, man. Uh, I could talk to you forever. Like I said, I want to get the best friends in here, but I also have never done any of the housekeeping. So let me thank our Patreon producers, Mohammed, Justin Toff, Das Bearju, Blackjack, and Jarrett Brown. Remember, everybody, this is We Have Cool Friends, the cool show where we interview the cool friends in our life about the cool things they're doing. You should subscribe to it. You can get it on youtube.com/kindafunny. Sometimes on Kinda Funny Games, where I think we will playlist this one is sure. You can get it on iTunes, Spotify. It's everywhere podcast services are available. Please like, subscribe, share. Today, we are sponsored by Hymns and Honey. Remember, if you want to get the show ad-free, you can go to patreon.com/kindafunny. We cut out the ads there, but you're not listening to that. So instead, let me tell you about 4hymns.com. You've heard us talk about 4hymns for a long time because, of course, they are very, very helpful for Andy and Nick, to the point that I just talked about this on Games Daily. We were having a conversation and it naturally came up and we were joking about it. And Nick was like, no, you don't understand. The hair I have is because of 4hymns.com. Those gummies actually work and do all these amazing things for him. So basically, 4hymns.com is a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, sexual wellness, and more for men. Thanks to Science Baldness can be optional. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You can go to 4hymns.com. You talk to a doctor there. They look through your reports. They talk to you. And if they decide it's right, they can prescribe prescriptions to make you keep your hair. Remember, of course, by the age of 35, up to 60 people, or 60% of people have lost their hair and won't get it back. The best thing you can do is try to get it back right now. That's what it's all about. Of course, like we said before too, it's for hair loss, skincare, and sexual wellness for men. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. 40% of men by the age of 40 struggle with not being able to maintain an erection. You can work through ED issues here. And that's the whole point of Hims, of course, is that they have you talking to doctors online. So you have to go to a waiting room. You don't have to feel weird about going to something like this. It's completely confidential and discreet. It's a great service. So, ladies and gentlemen, try Hims today by starting out with a free online visit. Go to 4hymns.com/KFMS. That's FORHIMS.com/KFMS. 4hymns.com/KFMS. Prescription products are subject to doctor's approval and require an online consultation with a physician who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Remember, 4hymns.com/KFMS. And our other sponsor is Honey. Honey is online shopping that is super, super easy. It is a free online shopping tool that saves you money online. Honey automatically finds the best promo codes and applies them to your cart, which makes online shopping finally feel as easy as it's supposed to be. Imagine you're shopping one of your favorite sites, Target, Best Buy, Sephora, etc. When you check out, this little box drops down, and all you have to do is click Apply Coupons. Wait a few seconds for it to scan every promo code on the internet and watch the prices drop. These guys, of course, sponsored us quite a while ago. I had started using it because Tim said I had to for the ad, and I was like, whatever. And then to this day, I still use Honey because it still really works. I'm looking at my browser right now, and I have a little H next to my little face. That's going there. When you go to any of the sites you go to, it just looks for it and does it. You can save on fashion, tech, all that jazz. I've saved a lot by doing it. It finds the best discount code. It's fantastic. Honey has already found over 18 million members, $2 billion in saving. So why aren't you doing this? It's free. If you're not using Honey, you're literally passing up free money. It's free to use and installs in just 2 clicks. Get Honey for free at joinhoney.com/morning. That's joinhoney.com/morning. Kahlief Adams.
Man, you killed those promos. Good God, those are fantastic. That was
Thank you
really
very much. That's why they keep me around, I think.
I just
Kevin's
wanna
been
know
trying to get rid of me for a while, but then they're like, he can read the ads well, so don't get rid of him.
I just need to know on the next Love and Sex stuff.
Yeah.
when Nick and Tim talk about hymns,
Yeah.
I need to know if it has horny goat weed in it because horny goat
Jesus
weed
God.
is one of the best ingredients in any product ever, and I just think it's funny as hell that that's an actual thing.
When they
Anyway,
do it next time, I'll give you the call-in number ahead of time so you can be the first call.
like, "Yo, does this have horny goat weed?" "All I'm calling for, man. I just need to know if it has the horny goat weed." Anyway,
Kahlief, are you ready to enter the friend zone?
let's get it. Let's
This is
do
where
it.
people can go to patreon.com/kindafunny and submit questions for our guests. Of course, with everything going wrong and working from home and viruses and stuff, we did this one on Twitter just to be a bit easier. Lucas wrote in and said, what do you see as the prime good example in the industry of bringing in more diversity, both in studios and on the media side? And what can we do to support that? Thanks for all your great content.
Ooh, the folks over at Cheddar Esports have been doing a fantastic job of that for sure, like, in a very visual way, like, in a content produced way, like, they have, pretty much all PLC cast. They've been doing a really fantastic job of bringing in guests, all over the place, including Danny Pena over from Game Attack Radio and some other folks as well. I've made an appearance too. I think they're doing great. I Need Diverse Games as an organization has been doing really well. Um, Black Girl Gamers has been doing really well as well in the UK, making some of that stuff happen. And then like if you're a Twitch advocate and you watch Twitch a lot, like the folks over at the cookout.org, they have amassed a fantastic roster of streamers who are POC folks, who have been doing one really good just content work in terms of their individual streams, and then also really just great work in terms of building out that conversation in a real way. So like those are a couple of folks off the top of my head that are really knocking it out of the park right now.
Uh, this is I'd like to think a dumb question, but I feel like I have to ask it.
Yeah,
Do you see it getting better? Is it getting better? Diversity industry?
yeah, like it's getting better, but like the one of the conversations I had at Dice this year, which was around I ran a round table, and they basically were like, "Hey, come to the round table with a major topic that you want to kind of talk to folks in the industry with." And if you've ever been to Dice, it's like the heavy hitters of all heavy hitters in that space.
Right. Like if
Um,
you didn't know, if you haven't been to Dice, ladies and gentlemen, first off, I host the award show, no big deal. But
right.
beyond that, it is like the top of the companies. It is
Mhm.
Shuhei, it is Phil, it is Spencer, it is, I mean, it's Phil Harrison. It's that level of people walking around talking to each other.
Yeah, just hanging out, just doing their thing. And the diversity question didn't come up there, but it was one of the things that I wanted to tackle was we have this conversation around diversity that is always around the visual parts of diversity, right? We have this conversation like seeing people. Representation is a huge part of that conversation. My angle that I wanted to try to hit and I'm trying to hit, and I need people to help me do it, is I want to talk about the financial space that we as POC folks, marginalized folks, represent to the industry. And I think that that is a thing that when you don't get people to attach themselves to the kind of like hearts, minds, and feels part of the conversation, because I think
Mhm.
most people are like, I don't want to be racist and I don't want to, gatekeep people and I don't want to do that. And they will figure out ways to work themselves around it in whichever cultural ways they feel are most representative of like, we don't have enough people in game development who are brown or black or whatever. We don't have enough people in this space. I was like, well, okay, fine. That's one version of that, which we know is bullshit. But the second part of that is, as a consumer, as I pull myself back from the media part of what I do, and as a consumer, I know that there is a huge amount of money that comes in from communities that look like mine every day, every year that go into gaming. If I can't get you to feel good about, race relations or the conversation around, diversity in that respect, I can make you feel it in terms of conversations around how much money you miss every year by not marketing directly to our audience, right?
Mhm.
And that's a part of what I do when I poke people for sponsorships or for brand alignments or for, working with other organizations or companies to say like, we don't have the numbers that you might need, the numbers that you are constantly looking for from influencers, but the community that I am a part of and have a very strong connection to, you don't understand how much money you leave on the table every year by literally not talking to us in any form or fashion except for whatever month aligns with your racial identity, right? So if you don't do that work, let me help you do that work, at least for the sliver of people that I have in my fold, right? And I think that's a part of the conversation. So the conversation for me has changed a bit where I want that, hearts and feels and minds part of it to be there because that's the part that everyone feels good about. That's the
Sure.
Coke Pepsi moment. but the ground level grassroots, like every day, how much money are you spending with your ad revenue towards POC podcasts, towards POC streams, towards marginalized folks who are doing fantastic work in that space, and we're at the top of that list. I think I will
Sure.
say that
Yeah.
to the end of time. I think we're killing it right now in terms of conversations, but people aren't willing to buck up their money with to be behind that stuff. So I think in terms of diversity, it is getting better. We're seeing people really pay attention to it. It's not anywhere near where it should be still, but for me, the conversation in terms of how I'm tackling that conversation has changed. I just need to prove out my hypothesis of like us bringing in billions of dollars to the industry every year. And I started doing that some of the work a little bit before Dice with some statistics, and then came to it. And I'm still trying to find good people to help me build that conversation out in a good way, because I feel like that will actually make the industry better.
Sure.
Will
Yeah. I speak to
actually
them
move
on the
people
bottom line, which is what they care about, right?
Yep, exactly.
I like this question a lot from Richard.
Yep.
What inspires you lately?
Ooh, inspires me. I'm really inspired by music. Like music has been a huge part of my life in very profound ways. Um, I'm also really um I don't know. Like when I get sparks of inspiration, it usually comes from other forms of media. So like when I think of things that I want to do around the show, like the show for me has always been a radio show and not a visual one. Like, and when I say that, I mean like radio in terms of like music. The problem is you
Mm-mm.
can't use licensed music at all because people will take your stuff down. But whenever I think of an episode, I'm like, "Oh, this would be dope to be with a J. Cole track," or "This is the foundation of this is, this Talib Kweli track," or whatever it is, like and when we were first doing the show, like, in the first 20 episodes, if you go back and listen to that stuff, we had a music break every week. And that music
Nice.
break, the foundation of what that song was the underlying and the underpinnings of every episode. And I would love to get back to that. We when we were doing the work over at X-Ray.fm out here in Portland, we were like one of the first podcasts, I think maybe in the Pacific Northwest, to be on terrestrial radio.
Mhm.
And that was what I was hoping to get to, was making that kind of college radio mashup between that and video game content, and figuring out a good way to bridge those gaps. Because I think like there's
That's
so many
awesome. Like that is awesome. Like I love that.
there's so many things that we get to miss because of the way that the structures are set up, right? It's like I would love the thing I'm dying for someone to figure out is like, I used to work at ASCAP back in the day. And I would see the amount of money that Prince used to make on his music like, internationally, which was always the thing that stayed with me because I was like, "Oh, I want every artist who makes a piece of music to get paid as well as they possibly can because it's hard to get that money." Unless you're like a huge superstar, right? Like you don't make the money that like there's very big differences between that the people who are making crazy dough and the people who aren't.
Yeah.
But everyone
They're just
deserves
struggling to make it.
yeah, but everyone deserves to be able to figure out ways to use that content in the best and most reasonable ways that they possibly can. And it's always been this weird gap between video games and music, unless you're doing it within the game itself. And I want content creators to be able to use that music. It is the foundation, and it is the playlist or the soundtrack of your life is always around you. You're always thinking about this song that you remember when you had your first kiss, or that when you were walking in a beautiful day and everything smelled right and everything looked right and all that stuff, and you feel it, right? Why can't you use that stuff in the content that you want to make? So those are things I think about all the time. I'm like trying to make music in dreams all the time.
Hell yeah.
I'm making music on my phone all the time. You'll see me randomly post the thing I've been making on my phone a bunch. So music is a huge part of that for me. And visuals, I'm seeing everything in the way that you would see it through a lens finder in a movie, like how you mock that thing up, how you display it, and how you share it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then wanna let's end with this one.
Okay.
Oh my god, there's somebody else at my door.
That was perfect. The
Ah.
timing was
I'm gonna
perfect.
ask it and I'm gonna run away, but I'll be right back.
What up?
Jacob says, I would love to know what cause tips are for building online communities.
Yes. As Greg runs away to grab the door.
No, no, my amazing wife ran out of her business call to come do it too.
Jen,
Because see, what I was confused. The first one wasn't the plumber. It was the guy who's here to fix these broken drapes. So now we have two different maintenance people here doing awesome
Oh,
stuff as Jen
this
runs around taking call after call.
this old house with Greg and Jen.
I know, right?
Um, uh, uh, I mean, the biggest thing about building an online community is being honest, right? Like, I feel, I've had some pretty big ups and downs in terms of like how I have decided that I want Bricago and Spawn of Me to go. Like, I've made some decisions early on that were like, I want to run a tight ship. I want to make sure that everyone feels welcome here. I want to make sure that everyone feels good about the content. I want to make sure that we're speaking directly to the needs of the community. And we fail on that because I'm a one person team often.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't get everybody in a week to be able to do that thing. Like, I feel like we haven't done great in terms of showcasing stories from, Latinx communities, from Asian communities, from all LGBTQ communities. Like, I haven't done the work to push that thing out in the most in the best ways. Only because I've just like run out of time. So it makes it easier when I'm just like, hey, I'm black and these are things I'm thinking about, and here's some more black things.
Here's the boiled down version. I'm black. This is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, basically, here's I'm black and I got stuff. I got things to talk about. But I want to, and I think that's where I'm hoping to get to, right? Is like when I'm building out that community, I want people to understand that even if I've missed your angle, I'm thinking about your angle. I'm thinking about your perspective. I'm thinking about your prism because our prisms are very much aligned. And this is not to exclude white folks out of this conversation because I am lucky enough to have learned so many things through the interracial marriage that I'm in, of perspectives of things that I didn't see or wasn't paying attention to, or angles that I was blind to because of things that I just didn't see from, someone else's perspective, that I've been able to adopt some of those conversations and learn to be able to have those conversations in good and smart ways. So it's all about, making sure that you're paying attention to people's needs, giving them space to really get at you in a good way, in a reasonable, smart way. It's one of the reasons why we don't have a Discord. Is we used to have a Discord, and we no longer have a Discord. It's still there, but I just don't invite people to it because I'm not using it. I just don't have the
Sure.
time.
Yeah, no, that we've run into that ourselves, right? Where we had like the forums and stuff, and then
Yeah,
there is a Discord for Kind of Funny, but none of us are on it, so it's just a fan thing. Like you can't be everywhere. You have to pick your battles.
yeah, absolutely. If someone wants to help run a Discord for me, I would love you. But I can't pay you, and I'm sorry. But like again, picking your spots, knowing how to talk to people in that way. And again, like the fundamental foundational thing is always treat people well. Like, this life is short. I believe that. I didn't think that I would make it past the age of 25, and I'm here at 42 or 41. Um, and knowing how so many people have looked out for me, and how so many people have given me a platform to talk about the stuff that I hope to share with all of you, has made my life richer, and it's made my life better, and it's given me the ability to kind of um, understand where people are while also lifting them up. And I think at the end of all this, that's where I hope to land. Like, I hope that I was able to, push as many people as people pushed me, and to get people in good spaces where they can do the thing that they love. And that will be at the end of it, what makes it all worth it.
Kahlief Adams, you are awesome. I hope somebody tells you that all the time. I'm sure your wife does. I don't tell you enough how awesome you are. You inspire me, man. So thank you so much for doing what you do, and thanks for making the time to come on We Have Cool Friends today.
Really quick before we dip out, I
Yeah.
have to say two quick things. One, I love you, man. I love you.
Nah,
I
I love you.
appreciate
You
you.
know that.
Um, One of the things that has made me really happy about seeing you grow in this space has been you and the crew starting to tackle stuff that was a little bit out of your wheelhouse, but you figured out good ways to bring that in and talk to your audience like adults, which I love.
Thank you.
That has been a thing that I have always really appreciated, especially in the past couple of years. Like, I think there was a huge turning point for you to dig into the weeds a little bit, and I think that has made you, your crew, and your audience that much smarter and that much better. And also, you know, I didn't understand how hard you bust your ass until I came over the first time, and and I have a bigger appreciation for you in that respect because I see how hard you bust your ass and the team busts their ass. it gave me I like left kind of funny that day and went home and like got on my phone and was talking to Reef and C about it. And I was like, I know it's a lot of kind of like sophomoric jokes that happen here and there, and that's been the kind of part of the grind for a bit. But like seeing how much they bust ass makes me want to bust ass even more. And that to me was huge because I was like, I'm already busting my ass. I can't bust ass anymore. And they're killing it in this small office and like asses and elbows to each other and
Yeah.
like mountains of LaCroix and all this crazy. And I was like, it made me really appreciate again, like people see the end result, but they don't see the work that goes behind it. And I'm
Yeah,
like
I think
seeing mocking up a thumbnail in Photoshop, and I was like, oh shit, he's doing the work.
right. That
And that was
that's
the
the
thing. Go ahead.
the inspiring thing about our space, I think, is the way that we all inspire each other. I think in other
Mm,
places you'd see it turn into competition, you'd see it turn into people being mad at other sites, channels, whatever. And with us, it's always I go and I work with somebody else, whether it be Rooster Teeth or whether it be I do a community podcast, and you're like, man, this gets me hyped to go back to work tomorrow.
yeah. Last thing before we dip out is everybody at home. This is gonna get like smidge political. I'm gonna do it really fast. I love you all. I'm thinking about you a lot when it comes to the future of the planet. I'm thinking about you a lot when it comes to the future of everything that you're doing. Um, I believe in all the stuff that you're trying to put out into the world. The energy that you have is good. Folks, no matter however you decide to kind of put that vote down, I need you all to rep this November. Like it's a huge deal. We see what's happening in the world today, and I really am hoping that people, get off their butts and put out some good energy out into the space to go out and vote. It's going to be a huge deal this year. And we're going to hopefully be doing some stuff. We haven't nailed it down in terms of our next Spawn for Good thing that we're going to be doing.
Mhm.
We're thinking about towards the end of the month where we're trying to work with the folks over at Vote Riders again about getting people out to the poll. So we may be looking for one, people to signal boost it and share it out, and two, we're going to looking for people to stream with us, an hour or two during a weekend, and helping to get out the good message that Vote Writers has been pushing out. So again, best friends, like you have a fantastic community, you have power, you have lots of energy that is good for the world. We need everybody to share that good energy out. So mad love to you all, and thank you again, Greg, for having me.
Amen, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been We Have Cool Friends. Of course, you should go subscribe to everything Kahlief does. What's the easiest place to send them?
You can hit us up on any podcast platform. We're on everything. Please hit the subscribe button. My goal for this year is for us to hit over 5,000 subscribers on our podcast. Like, please hit that subscribe button. It will really do me some good. But you can also hit us up on patreon.com/spawnami, where you can get some more thoughts a little bit early, 2 days early before it hits the main feed. Again, we're on YouTube, youtube.com/spawnami, Instagram, instagram.com/spawnami podcast. And of course, on Twitter, at Spawn on Me is where you can find me musing and all that full cool stuff. And then Twitch every Thursday, 7 p.m. twitch.tv/Spawn on Me. We're almost at 4,000 followers there,
Ooh,
and we're only 99,000 away from 100K on YouTube. So,
there you go. Look, that's right around the corner.
tell a friend, tell somebody else, like put it out on Reddit, all the cool stuff.
Awesome.
Work.
Love you so much, Kahlief. Thank you so much.
Love you, fam. I'll see you in a bit.
All right. Until next time, everybody. It's been our pleasure to serve you.